This episode of the Top Music Guitar Podcast is proudly supported by our sponsors, Music Notes. You're listening to the Top Music Guitar Podcast, the show for guitar teachers to learn about the craft of teaching great guitar lessons that students love. If you're looking to start or expand your studio and make guitar teaching your full-time dream job, you've come to the right place. Each week, you'll get to hear from some of the top guitar teachers from around the globe and get their best tips and experiences so you too can build your own dream studio. I'm your host, Michael, and I've founded one of the top guitar schools in Australia, written a best-selling curriculum, and I mentor guitar teachers. I'm excited to share my expertise with you and the wisdom of all the experts we interview. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Let's get into it. Hello there, everyone. Today we have a special episode for you. Way back in 2020 when the pandemic first hit, I got really excited about a bunch of projects and decided to launch a podcast called Guitar Quest. As with most people who launched the podcasts within the pandemic, I did a single episode before getting distracted with other projects. Now, the episode in question was a fantastic interview with Michael Dolce, who happens to be a session guitarist for the hit TV show The Voice Australia, as well as touring with and doing session work for an A-list of both Aussie and international celebrity artists. Now, the interview is an absolute gem, and it was a real shame that it was only ever heard by 16 people, of which, a handful of are in my immediate family, including my mum and my girlfriend. So what we're going to do is dig this one up out of the archives and share it here with you today. Enjoy. Here we are. Michael, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Pleasure, mate. Thank you.
No worries at all. It's great to speak to you once again. And I first met Michael at a guitar clinic that he was putting on. Probably must have been close to 10 years ago now. Must have been 2011 or 2012.
Wow, that is a long time ago. It's almost like a lifetime ago.
It is like a lifetime ago. But what I wanted to do, Michael, you are like, in terms of session guitar players in Australia, you are right up there where the action is. So, Michael, you're hot off the filming of the recent season of The Voice. Is that correct?
That's right, mate. Yeah. Well, as we speak, we've still got the grand final to go. But, that's pretty much the last show of the season. And, just looking forward to a little bit of a rest, because it's pretty full on, once we get into it. Yeah, so looking forward to a little bit of a break,
Yeah, wonderful. Well, how's it been the experience? Obviously, no live audiences and the whole COVID situation has changed the way the show's being put together. Not that we want to talk about The Voice too much, but what's the experience been like this year as opposed to previous years?
Yeah, it's been really interesting, Michael. I mean, we were lucky enough to have an audience in the preliminary rounds, which are the blind auditions, the battle rounds. Then COVID hit and we had to stop rolling the show. So we basically had a couple months off there in the middle, and we rescheduled the remaining rounds at a later date. And they were all pre-recorded shows with no audience, as you mentioned. It was quite an interesting process. I mean, the show had to basically reinvent it, reinvent the wheel, so to speak, because there was so much that relies on the audience, and obviously the two coaches that couldn't be in Australia. So hence the screens on the seat and Boy George and Kelly Rowland having to do their thing, live from overseas, which was really interesting. As far as the vibe was concerned, it was really strange because when we were recording the shows, it felt like a rehearsal. So it was really hard to sort of get into. It wasn't hard, but it was just, it was, for me, there wasn't as much pressure on my shoulders knowing that the shows weren't live. For some strange reason, I was quite relaxed. But, it doesn't rule out the fact that you still got to perform and make sure you nail the part. So that still goes on in my head, but a lot more relaxed, with everyone on set. And, yeah, it was just a weird time, So we're just hoping that, for the next season it all clears up and we're back to normal, because, having the audience there does pump you up and, gets that good adrenaline running
Or
in the veins, which is good.
energy.
Yeah.
Well, we've been watching at home. We've been really loving and enjoying it. And I get to point and go, hey, there's Michael.
It's rare that you see me at the back there. They're doing their best to hide us. I don't know why. Nah, they're pretty good actually this year. I mean, we've got a great crew, and a modern young crew, so hence, the show's looking great. I think it's looking better than ever. And yeah, it's just a pleasure to be part of, So, but yeah, it's not a reoccurring thing that you get to see me on TV every week or every show because, there are elements to the show that, don't need to be seen, and I'm probably one of them. So
it's like playing Where's Wally?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, moving on to, discovering how you actually created and got to the position you're in. So how did you go about structuring the lifestyle that you currently had? Was it intentional or did you just fall into it?
Look, as far as, becoming a session guitar player, that was something that I always wanted to, like, for me, my goal and my dream was always to be a guitar player. Even when I was doing cabinet making at the time and, working in the factory, at 7 a.m. till 5 p.m. or whatever it was, I'd always have my guitar instrumental music on and listen to that every day. And, that would inspire me. I'd get home and, I'd do my practice. As soon as I get home at 6, I'd have my dinner, clean up, and then I'd jump in my room till midnight and practice 6 hours. I did that pretty much religiously for about 5 years. Yeah, right up to the point where I finished my trade. And that definitely was a good thing for me because it pretty much established my foundations with my technique, and it just, it made me want to strive for the goal that I had placed, at an earlier age, which was to be a full-time guitar player. So, yeah, but my what would you call it? My luck had changed, and I had that opportunity when Hugh Wilson, as you mentioned in your intro, I had the opportunity to play for Hugh. Hugh won the whole Star Search thing back in the 90s, early 90s. And for me, that was a full-time role. So I had the opportunity to leave my job and slot into the full-time musician role. That pretty much lasted a couple of years, and then it all died down. I had to start sort of looking for another job. And I've always been brought up to, not laze around and, earn your money, basically. My dad had 2 jobs. He worked hard, worked 7 days, to support the family. And that pretty much was instilled, in myself and my 2 brothers. So, I didn't feel right about staying at home and, just playing guitar. I had to sort of, work on getting another job. And, I became a cleaner there for a year. I'd work from, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Then I started my own car cleaning business, which was called Pro Car Care. A friend of mine actually started the business, but I was working for him, earning an income, washing cars. It was a mobile car service. And then he offered me a part in the business where I could just start my own clientele out west. And I did that, and I got myself a trailer, and, I just remember the day I put out about 10,000 pamphlets, and that was it. It had me going for the next 3 years, and I established quite a healthy business. I had a few guys working for me. At the same time, that took up a lot of time during the day. It started 6 a.m., finish at 7 p.m. in summer. So it didn't leave me much time to play guitar, but I wanted to get out of that, and I just left the business. I gave it to my friend. He took it over. I started working at Bunnings, which was called the Hardware House at the time, and I was working there on the weekends, which gave me time during the week to establish a teaching studio and get back into what I wanted to do, which was obviously play guitar. Then I got offered a job in a music store called Lombardo Music by a beautiful man called Ross Lombardo, who has passed away since, and his brother Vince Lombardo, who had, taught me so much about the music industry alone, because they were pretty huge in the industry, and Vince himself is still going. He's an amazing guitar player. I love the guy. I learned so much off him. I would have the opportunity to work with Vince on a Wednesday in the music store, and he really showed me, how to basically. I still, to this day, I think he's got one of the best tones I've ever heard in my life. He's still, he used to love working with gear, and we used to change speakers over, and he'd try, this speaker and this Mesa Boogie amp, and then he'd try, there was a lot of that going on, which taught me a lot about tones and sounds and how intricate he would get about just trying to get that right tone, and he taught me how to restring my guitars properly. He taught me how to tune my guitars properly, how to maintain them. I found that was my grounding in understanding about gear, you know what I mean? And apart from the playing, he'd always play, and I used to love hearing him play. I do remember, in that environment, he used to throw me into some of his gigs, which were reading gigs. And I used to dread it. I remember the first one he threw me into, and I'm not a strong reader, you know what I mean? I know how to read, but I'm not a strong reader. And he threw me into a reading gig, and oh my goodness, it was just that. From that point, I mean, I had so much respect for him and Ross, but it really cemented that level that he was at, you know what I mean, where he could just turn up and just read dots, and it was just, and I couldn't do that, I basically fell on my face, and I felt so bad because I felt I let him down, and he was so encouraging. He was like, mate, don't worry, who cares, like, this is the way you're going to learn. It's the only way you're going to learn. And but that really, it sort of scared me too, it was like, I don't know if I'm that type of player, I just don't want to be reading music at gigs, because I'm not confident enough to do that. And I felt like it was too late for me to start learning, which is not the case. You can learn to read music or play guitar at any age. So, in those days, being in the shop alone, they had a very successful business and a massive teaching school. And, I had some lessons when I was younger. My mum took me to some guitar lessons. And my guitar teacher at the time, Mr. Kelly, he taught me to read music, at basic level. So I probably, if we were going to compare levels or books, I started on Mel Bay's, let's say, but it was actually Cole's Method, book 1, which is pretty much equivalent to Mel Bay's. And we got through that, and he was always giving me extra sheet music to learn, to read. But then we started on the Berkeley book, and he got me through that. Like I probably got halfway. And then I didn't give up. I think I just had enough at the time. I think I would have been probably about 7 or 8 years old.
Wow.
And I as an 8-year-old, you want to be doing other things. So, I've always kept that part of my learning. Obviously, doing the voice, that came in, so handy because I do believe if I didn't learn that part of my repertoire, so to speak, I probably wouldn't have taken on the voice or any other gigs that, involved reading. Reading at Vince's level is another ball game. That is, Rex, that you've got the Rex Goes, Clive Lendage, all these big players, Simon Patterson, who was on Hey Hey Saturday. These guys are just, they can read, anything, like anything. You just throw it in front. I'm not that player, totally not that player. And being on The Voice, which is great, the band, there are a couple of us in the band that are really strong readers, but myself, and a couple of the other guys, can read, but I wouldn't call us the best of readers. But actually, I shouldn't say that. They are great readers. I'm probably the worst, to be quite honest with you. And we always joke about that. But I'm more of a visual, like to hear things, play it back. So if there's certain lines within the music, I'll memorize the line. When it comes up to that point, I'll play it. That's how I do things. And then obviously once I get back to the shop era, I was very grateful, especially to Ross, because not having any qualifications in that, I really wanted to start teaching, and get into that side of things. And Ross was the only one that gave me the opportunity to teach at the school there at Lombardo Music. Because he would always hear me play in the shop, and he just turned around one day and said, Michael, I didn't feel right to ask him for the teaching job, but he came up to me and said, do you want to teach here? And I was just like blown away. I thought my Christmases came at once. I was so grateful. I was like, Ross, are you sure? And he's like, of course, Michael, I can hear you play in the shop, mate. You're fantastic. He was just very encouraging. So was Vince. So he offered me the teaching job there, and I had the teaching job there for a few years, probably about 4 years. And I'd work in the shop during the week, and it was like a dream come true for me. That was it for me. I was happy with that. I still wanted to play guitar, obviously, and I was playing in covers bands. But, having that stability for me was a great thing. I was happy with that. Then obviously opportunities arose once I started, dabbling in different covers bands. And even in that period, and before I even got to the shop, there was a time period of I'd say at 6 months where I was trying to get another job after I finished my car cleaning business. And in that time, I would grab one of the street magazines at the time, which were for free, and I'd go to the back section and look up, guitarists wanted for covers bands, working covers bands, and I'd apply for all of them. And they would throw certain songs to me to learn. I would learn them inside out. I would learn the track. I'd make sure my sound was pretty much almost identical, if not the same. I'd make sure I learnt the song in semitone down, semitone up. I would learn how to solo over the whole song. I'd over-prepare myself, just knowing that if I was to be put in that situation where they put me on the spot, I was prepared. So my thought process was, I'm not going in there to jam, I'm going in there to get the gig, okay? And that's how that mentality has always been something that I've kept in my whole approach to, getting, achieving my goals, so to speak. So I'd go in for the audition, I'd have my sounds down, and 9 times out of 10 I'd get the audition, and it did come to a point where I was sort of overlapping gigs, and so I had to sort of let a couple of things go. But what that actually helped with was getting the opportunity to sit back and having these bands contact me to fill in when they needed me, because they saw me play in the audition and they saw how prepared I was, and I was all over the songs. So all of a sudden I had these gigs that were coming in on the weekend, and I was working solidly, I was working even 3-4 nights a week at that point. And then the music shop thing kicked in, and I was just like, this is fantastic. I get to work during the day, during the night, teach during the weekend. So it was full on, always had the guitar on me. It was where I wanted to be, I had all my bases covered, and that was it. I didn't have any intentions to, become a superstar or anything like that. The only thing that I always strived for, and I still to this day have at the back of my head, is just becoming that solo artist, the instrumentalists that people can enjoy listening to. All I want is, and all I've ever wanted is just respect from my peers, and, to be respected and acknowledged, as a guitar player, even at, where I'm at the moment. And this never changes to anyone, regardless of where you're at in that point in your playing. You will never change your goals. I mean, you will never stop at, once you reach a goal, you'll set another goal, and you just keep wanting to climb, that ladder. And that's how I feel to this day. I still practice every day. I do 2 hours in the morning. I get up really early. I get up at 5 a.m. I do 2 hours before my kids get up. and work on things that I feel that I need to work on. The 2 hours is really a maintenance thing as well, but I do utilize those 2 hours, coming up with new concepts for my playing, and that excites me. But apart from that, there's a lot of roadblocks and mountains that I've had to climb, so to speak, and I still do. Even at this point in my career, you're still fighting, to maintain your career and keep it, oiled and maintained and consistent. That never stops. The rumor of once you get to a certain point, that's it runs itself. It's not true. If you count the amount of guitarists in Australia alone, there's guitar players that would play me under the ground, that absolutely crap all over me, and they haven't had that opportunity, and hopefully they do. But I was at the right place at the right time, working with, once I started getting into the covers scene, I worked with a lot of guys that eventually became top-notch producers, and musical directors. And I feel that the way I presented my brand and I presented myself by being prepared, reliable, respectful, that's what's carried me through to the next point of my career, which, if you want to see it as the higher profile sort of work. So, yes, there is an element of being, at the right place at the right time, but, it doesn't deny the hard work that I've put into maintaining and trying to sort of establish myself in the industry. And like I said, I never was the one to sort of chase it. It sort of just came to me by being in those situations and filling in for Joe Blow's band and so on, So, those earlier moments in my career pretty much established my foundations to where I'm at now, and I'm very grateful to those guys that gave me the opportunity, especially all those covers bands. I still play covers, and I feel that that's where my home is, where the people that have really supported me, they're the guys that I keep as my priority and, on top of the list. The profile stuff comes in, it goes, and I am very grateful for it. But it's the guys that are doing the covers gigs that are really keeping me alive, and giving me the work. And, I'm very grateful to those people. Yeah. Sorry, I just went on a rant there.
That's all fantastic stuff and really, really valuable insights coming there that, whether people are just casual hobby guitar players or whether they want to be, the next Michael Dolce voice guitarists who are aspiring through the ranks, just to hear your own reflections and your journey and important points like, you went in there with the intention of getting the gig, not with the intention of jamming. Just like little gems like that, I think everyone can learn from. And success is.
Yeah, and I think if you put the passion before I wouldn't call it greed, but the stardom. If that's what your intentions are, great. I highly encourage you to do that. But reality is that what makes you different to everybody else. That's what you have to ask yourself. What makes me different as a guitar player to, such and such down the road? Why am I going to get the gig over him? Or what is it about me that's going to maintain my position in this band? Because as the story goes, you can. I know so many players that keep saying to me, "Oh man, I've done so many gigs," but that's not the point there. The point is, I've done a lot of gigs as well, but it's the ones that you maintain, the ones that you keep, that are the important ones. You 100 gigs, but how many can you retain? And how many are you still working with? That is the key. It's keeping those relationships healthy and doing the right thing by everybody in the industry. That's important, and I live by that.
Fantastic. So obviously maintaining your networks, building up, the reputation as the go-to guy, the guy that delivers, who's organized, who's professional, who gets the job done over a period of years, and, not having to find a new band all the time just because you're not delivering or you're burning bridges or things like that.
Well, that's the thing, it is important to just to maintain that brand, because when you're up there on the stage, you are presenting your business, your brand, regardless of whether, not just within the band, but the people that are watching you, and that's important as well.
Yeah. What was the biggest hurdle you've had to overcome in your music career or your, rise to where you are to get to this point?
Look, the thing for me, Michael, has always been, even at the level that I'm playing at now, look, you never learn to, or you do learn to control your nerves and, in those situations. But the biggest hurdle for me has always been anxiety and obviously not believing in what I do. For the voice gig, for example, that it took the musical director 3 months to convince me to do the gig because I just thought I wasn't the right guy, and I was just getting anxious talking to him about it, when he offered it to me. All these thoughts were going in my head while he was talking to me, thinking, man, I'm not the right guy for this. There's no way I'll freak out. It's just, no way am I taking this gig. And sure enough, he definitely pursued it because I had done a lot of work with Scott Applin, who's the musical director on the show. He did a lot of stuff wrote a lot of songs for the ABC Kids stuff. And I was in his studio nearly every week, placing down guitars. And we did a lot of touring together. So he knew what I was capable of, and he knew what I was like in the studio. And, he called me up and he was like, I want you there. And I was like, no, I don't think I'm the right guy. Sorry, man, I just can't do it. And, we had, copious amount of conversations that pretty much ended always with me saying, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And then he'd convince me somehow. And then, the next day I'd be doing it. And then next conversation I'll be like, nah, you know what? I don't want to do it. But he pursued it. And I'm very grateful, for him to do that, because look, the easy option is to run away, and the biggest lesson I learned from this whole scenario of being thrown into, The Voice, which is a beast of a show, and the amount of learning and concentration and focus that you need for a show like this is just, incredibly hard. I did a lot of one-song performances on Sunrise. I played, with Delta Goodrum. We did a whole bunch of shows. That didn't bother me as much as, being thrown in a show like The Voice. The anxiety of being on a show like that, and even though I say, playing with Delta and stuff was okay, I still had the anxiety happening, and that's, it's a really hard thing. I mean, the people out there that are listening to this would know exactly what I'm talking about. That will never go. The nerves never go. The adrenaline never goes. You just learn to deal with it. It becomes part of your brand. It becomes part of you, the same way you would learn a chord on the guitar. You teach yourself to accept that this is part of you, and this is what's going to happen when the song starts, like on The Voice, every song, regardless, we play about 320 songs a season, and songs, as the click starts and you hear the count, the 1, 2, 3, 4, the heart starts racing. But, I've learned to sort of just relax, drop my shoulders, take a deep breath, and it's almost calming, up to the point. Then you start playing the song, and then I'm in my element. It's mainly the build to perform in that song. It's not so much performing the song; it's the build to get to that point, which cripples me. It's you can. I know there's help out there, and you can get a whole bunch of help and stuff like that. I do feel that I've helped myself a lot by coming up with my own techniques to deal with this monkey on my shoulders, so to speak. But it's become part of me, and I'm glad, because it gives me a bit of edge too when I'm playing. I like it. But yeah, that is definitely one of the hardest things I've ever had to battle, and I still battle it. But like I said, I've learned to deal with it, and it's just part of the game, and I know a lot of musicians out there are suffering, with it, and it's just, that's the way we are. We're creative people, and we want to be perfect about what we do. And, there's so many things that go through your head, One for me, is these are the things that are going through my head, before you perform a song. Okay, Michael, don't stuff this up. Okay. Secondly, Michael, make sure you do your patch changes correctly. Make sure you don't take your eyes off the chart. Focus, don't get too complacent. Make sure your page turn. All these things that are going through my head before the song is, performed. And it's weird because I know that once I play the song, I'm going to get to the other end of it, and everything's going to be fine. I know that, and I keep telling myself that. But it's the build to get to that point, and all these negative thoughts that are going through your head, that is, quite crippling. But you know what? Power through it, and I cannot complain. It's not as if this thing's going to kill me. I had a conversation with Peter Northcote. I've just lost you there for a second. I had an interesting, little lunch with Pete Northcote, and I rang him up and I was like, do you mind if I come and have a chat to you, about all this stuff? And, Peter Northcote's a legendary session guy from Australia. He's done it all, he's done it all. And we had a great chat, and the thing that really stuck out to out of everything we spoke about, he said to me, you know what, Michael, he goes, who cares if you stuff up? Nobody cares, mate. You're not going to die from it, and you're not going to harm anyone else by making a mistake. It's just like, and I was like, yeah, so why am I getting so worked up, Obviously on a show like The Voice, you don't want to be making mistakes because there's an expectation. You just don't make mistakes. So, but in general, when you're playing around town or, it's just, I always think about that, that comment, and it really helps. It helps me with, sort of just going, yeah, what are you worried about, you idiot? Just play guitar. But yeah, that's part of me, man. And as I said, and I've probably spoken a little bit too much about it, but hopefully someone can get, if anyone wants to have a chat to me about it, I'm more than happy to, have a chat. Just email me or whatever. Hopefully I'll be down at it's the Melbourne Guitar Academy. Is that right, Michael?
That's correct.
Hopefully I can come down and we can do a Q&A session, and I can show you some footage and talk about the back scenes of The Voice and show you exactly what goes on. It's quite a talking point amongst parents, students alike, and teachers, and everyone sort of comes to these sessions. So hopefully I can get down to Melbourne once all this craziness clears up.
As soon as the COVID situation's over, we'll definitely have you down.
Yeah.
Now we're just going to pause the interview for a second, guys, for a quick message from our wonderful sponsors at Music Notes. So teachers and students everywhere deserve a sheet music experience that impresses, and that's precisely what you get from musicnotes.com, the largest online retailer of quality sheet music. Now it's all about the attention to detail with Music Notes because they're run by musicians for musicians. So Music Note hold every piece in their catalog to the highest standard for the best experience, whether it's in the practice room right up to the performance. Now, Music Notes has the perfect arrangement for every musician, and every purchase is available right away. There's no shipping, they never run out of print, and the transcriptions are always available in the right key. So simply print from the Music Notes website or use the free Music Notes app to view your sheet music anywhere, anytime. And as an exclusive to our listeners, Music Notes are offering 25% off e-gift cards for a limited time only. So visit musicnotes.com/topmusic to claim this very special exclusive offer, and there's no code required. But I think, Michael, just listening to that and hearing, your own struggles with the anxiety and, questioning yourself, I think, think things like imposter syndrome and that,
Yeah.
So many musicians get that, but and that's what defeats them, or that's what stops them from taking that next step. So I think it's really valuable for, anyone listening to be able to hear that, people at the top still have the same doubts and fears that the people who are on the way up have. It's just that they, like you said, have your own coping mechanisms, or you got help about it, or you've somehow taken the opportunity and you've overcome that little voice in your head.
Yeah.
And that's the difference sometimes between the people that make it and the people that don't, or the people that get the good opportunities and the people that don't. And I think it's wonderful that you've shared that.
No, thanks, mate. I appreciate it. The other thing I just want to add to that is that, and I did mention this before I went on that little spiel there about the anxiety, was the easier option for me and a lot of other players out there, and I know this for a fact, is to say, no, I don't want to do it. I was lucky enough to have someone like Scott Applin to push me to do it, because I'd be sitting here today having a totally different conversation with you, if I didn't do the show. So very grateful of 9 years of probably the best, career I could ever ask for. And I'm, once the show decides to finish up, I'm a happy man. Like I feel like I've achieved my goals in that session world, not so much in the guitar player world, but the session world. And I'm very grateful. So, advice to the young players out there that do suffer with anxiety, there is, a lot of help out there, if you need it, to overcome these things. But my advice to you is just fight it. It's easy to overcome and learn to control it. And like I said, the easy option is to say no. Even I don't know whether you guys have your yearly concerts, Michael. I'm not too sure, but even in those situations, I know for a fact, a lot of the kids, do have the anxiety thing, and and it's easier for them to say, look, I don't want to do it, et cetera, et cetera. But it's the build to that point, and once you do it and you get to that other end, you sort of look back and you go, gee, I'm so glad I did that. That was so cool. And, and I guarantee once you finish that song, you want to play another one straight after it, because, you're so like, that wasn't so hard after all. And I love that feeling, of finishing the song. Now I want to start another song, and it's that frame of mind, that we've sort of got to overcome. We've got to enjoy it from the point we start the song to the end, and even the build up, learning to do that. It is a hard thing, but we'll all get through it. Not so hard after all.
That's absolutely fantastic. Well, you just mentioned before, like, you want to explore the guitar playing world a bit more as well, and build up that element of your career. So, what's left for you currently or beyond the voice, and where do you want to go next with your guitar journey?
Well, for me, recording another album, to the way that I'm playing now. I mean, my first album was recorded 9 years ago, coming up to 10 years. It's a long time ago. My playing has changed a lot since then. I do want to record another album, and and do that thing that instrumental guitarists do. Like I said, I don't want to rule the world, but I do want to be playing that, and immerse myself in that environment of instrumental guitar. Doing that, continuing with my master classes. I love doing those. I love doing the clinics, the Q&As, everything, which is obviously a part of all that. But yeah, my priority and my goal is still to pursue the full-time instrumental thing. And I know that'll happen, because, it is a time thing for me, when there's so much time consumed by a show like The Voice, 6 months of the year, and then I just pretty much go straight into a master classes as I normally do. But obviously this year it's a little bit different. But yeah, that's where my head's at, Michael. So who knows? Let's hope.
Wonderful. Now, you talked about gear and the importance of gear before. You've got a wonderful relationship with Charles Cillier Guitars. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that relationship and how you've gone about working with brands?
Yeah, look, I've played Charles Guitars for 22 years now. So we've built our businesses, our brands together. So we've seen each other's careers blossom into something else, along the line. So that's, we're friends before we are, guitar enthusiasts. I respect, he's like a brother to me. We've spent a lot of time together, working on designs of guitars, and we do have another guitar that's coming out, which is my real signature guitar, and I'm very excited about that. That's going to be called the Lyra, and hopefully we'll have that out in the next 6 months or so, ready for the Melbourne Guitar Show if it goes ahead next March. And the guitars speak for themselves. I'm very, very, very lucky to have found Charles. That was an interesting find, because he'd come into the shop at Lombardo Music when I was working there at the time, and he bought in one of his guitars that he made, and the rest is history. I asked him, he was like, "Yeah, I build my own guitars," and I thought, "Yep, I want one." So he built me a guitar, and I still play them to this very day. I don't play any other guitars. It's all Charles Cillier. Apart from the guitar side of things, I am very lucky to have found Andrew Farnham from Independent Music in Queensland, the distributors of the Fractal Audio Axe Effects units. I've been playing those on the show pretty much since season 2, actually. I wouldn't say day 1. Season 2 is when I started playing the Axe Effects, and have ever since. The units are just like next level amp modeling. I've used it for 9 years. I know the units inside out. I don't use an amp on the show. I go direct. Everything's direct, and it's phenomenal. The effects, the amp modeling, full stereo. Your in-ears is amazing. Makes me play. I feel it makes me play better. I feel it better. I don't miss an amp when it's behind me. Though when I do my gigs around town, I was once again very fortunate to have a deal with Fender. I'm endorsed in their new Tone Master amplifiers, which are absolutely amazing. The price is just ridiculously low. They weigh nothing. They are an amp model of a twin. So the only thing this amp does, it sounds like a twin. It doesn't do anything else, right? It looks like a twin. It sounds like a twin, and only weighs probably about 10 kilos. It's ridiculously light. And I use that around town with my Fractal Audio stomp box. Goes directly into the front of the amp, and that's my sound for cover gigs, and I love it. And I use those amps in my my masterclass tours all the time when I'm doing the stuff in the shops. That's the amp I plug into and the amp I play. So, yeah, I'm very grateful to be part of this team of great makers and brands. And I also endorse Hawk Picks, who are a UK company. They make these amazing picks. They are here. See that? It's that there.
Put a screenshot on the social media for all the people that who are listening. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it there. Okay, so Hawk Picks. Now, it's really interesting. When I was asked if I wanted to try these picks out by a good friend of mine, Mark Thompson, in the UK, and I've never been a pick guy. Like, I just use anything, really. I don't really care. But, once they sent these to me, and this is not a selling point, it's because it blew me away how consistent these picks are. First thing about these picks, they don't wear out. They're made from, I believe it's called Cassine or Cassian or whatever the composite is. And it's supposed to resemble tortoiseshell. Not that I've ever played a tortoiseshell pick, but the tone that comes off the pick is quite warm. It's really smooth. It's just a beautiful attack. You don't get any chirping like a lot of the other picks out there. Like I said, it doesn't wear out, and it just really glides between the strings. So I'm not much of a picker. I do a lot of sort of economy picking, where I sort of sweep a couple of strings, then pick a couple of things. But I could not believe how easy it was to glide between the strings, and I was just like, okay, maybe I'm just sort of, maybe it was a psychological thing. It's a new pick, it feels good. Picked up my other pick, and I'm thinking, nah, I feel really clumsy on this pick. So get back on the Hawk pick, fantastic, and I couldn't believe how much it contributed to my playing. So the other thing they do is that they've got like a right bevel and a left bevel, so that goes with your picking style, which is quite strange. I never even heard. I don't know if you can actually see.
Yeah. Wow.
Sort of see that. It's hard to sort of see in there, but it's quite a bevel on that. So basically, on that edge there, on that edge, when I pick down, it's obviously there's a nice bevel there. That sort of when you strike the string, there's hardly any not attacks, not the word.
Least resistance to the string.
Yeah, really not much resistance within the pick, as you mentioned, but a great addition to my playing, and I've been playing them for the last, I think, 3 years now. Never changed since then. They do all sorts of shapes and sizes and thicknesses, but that was the winner for me. Just from the word go, it wasn't even a question of whether I should just trial them. As soon as I tried it, I was happy with them. Mate, that was it. And the rest is history. But that is my happy family of gear, and just beautiful people to deal with, and that's what I love, Very respectful, very helpful, 24/7, help. I call it the helpline. Whenever these guys, whenever I need help, at midnight when I'm on The Voice, and I need to speak about a little program change or something's not happening on my XFX, I'll ring Andrew Farnham, and of course he picks it up. He knows that I'm calling him at 11 p.m.
Yeah.
Midnight. It's serious,
Yeah.
So yeah, he knows I'll be on set. I would never call him otherwise. But yeah, just great guys to deal with, mate. Awesome.
Fantastic. Well, we've only got a couple more questions left.
Yeah, sure, mate.
But with the aspiring guitarists who are listening in, what are 3 things an aspiring guitarist needs to know or work on if they have the ambitions of being a professional player or a semi-professional hobby player enthusiast?
Okay. First up, the most important thing for me is be yourself. Right? Don't be scared to be yourself, because that's the only thing that is going to make you different to everybody else. If you've got a big cloning or wanting to sound like someone else, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You need to explore other players and be inspired by other players and take on their ideas. And that I definitely 100% am behind. I think it's where you take it to become your own person, your own voice on the guitar, which is really important. Don't rely on YouTube too much. Don't use your eyes too much to learn things. Take things from YouTube and learn certain things with your ears as opposed to your eyes, because I find and I have found when I was learning things that, we didn't have YouTube back then. I'd have to learn things with my ears, and then I'd learn them thinking it was the right thing. It never sounded quite right, but it was close enough. And then obviously when I get to see the actual guitarist perform it, it was totally different. So I felt that I'd come up with my own way of doing things, and I developed that. So that's really important. Secondly, there's 10 things. Okay, I'm just going to flick across here, Mike. I'm not going to call this sheet up because I use this in my Q&As, which I find really important. Actually, I could probably start on that page and just flick. Can you still see me?
I can still see you, yeah.
Okay. So the list is 10 things that require zero talent. That's what I call this, right? And the 10 things are, being on time, work ethic, effort, showing energy, body language, passionate, being respectful, doing the extra thing that's required go the extra mile, when you get put into a situation, preparing yourself, being able to take direction, being coachable. That is so important, attitude. The 10 things that I always put out there, and you don't need talent for that. And this just doesn't apply to guitaring. I'm talking about, anything that you pursue in your career, whether it be a cabinet maker, as I was, I'm a cabinet maker by trade, or whether it be a truck driver, there has to be those elements if you want to maintain your brand and become a successful, business person and whatever you pursue, that's really important. These are pretty much the things that I have always lived by and followed in my career, and I still do, and I find that's what works for me and works for everybody else. So, you can take the advice or, come up with your own way of doing things, which is still okay as well. I'm not here to preach, my way is the only way, because that is not the truth. But, yeah, every person needs to find their way of maintaining their business and, hopefully creating a successful one. Spit that one out. So hopefully that's answered your question there, Michael.
Yeah, and, over delivering value, we asked for 3 things, we got 10, so that was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
You've obviously had a couple of teachers over the years and, have reached up to other session musicians and people who you'd consider, more experienced in certain areas.
Yeah.
It's like the most important lesson you've learned along the way.
I think the lesson that always comes is just be yourself. Be yourself. And going back to the 10 items on the list, that the lessons, of trying to sort of be something that you're not is important. I think just be yourself. That's important, and just love what you do. Earlier on in the piece, when I was starting my career, I wasn't enjoying myself as much, because for me it was all about I need to get better. I was putting too much pressure on myself, and I was losing the most important thing, which was to love what I was doing. So never lose that. If you're a guitar player out there or any instrument that you play, if that's what you want to do, don't make it a job. It's a passion. Just keep that in mind all the time, because if you put something else before the passion, then I feel that things might not go, the way you really want them to go. And ultimately, we want to be enjoying ourselves when we play instruments and having a good time. That's important. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And my final question, which will hopefully tie in with a lot of that, is if you go back in time and, speak to 15-year-old Michael as he's sitting on his bed in his bedroom about to start practicing guitar, what would you go back in time and give a younger version of yourself the advice
on? Okay, yeah. Okay, I know the first thing. The first thing would be, okay, Michael, you're 15 years old. Guitar playing will not pick up the chicks. Okay? So you've got to get good at your instrument if you want to become a full-time musician. That's the first thing I'd say to young Michael. The second thing would be, as I mentioned, don't take it so seriously. Just love what you're doing. As far as the playing and the curve, I feel like I've gone a long way around, because predominantly I am self-taught and I've had to teach myself a lot of things, and I would never change that, even though I know I've gone the long way around and I probably could have got to the same point a little bit quicker. I would never change that. And going back to, to all the players out there that are listening, work things out on your own. That's important too. If you've got a great teacher, which I'm sure you have, been at the Melbourne Guitar Academy, Michael, you teach yourself, right? Yeah, awesome. Couldn't ask for a better teacher. Your teacher is there to try and inspire you. Be respectful and listen to what the teachers have got to say, because they're there because they want to teach you. They want to sort of guide you in the right direction. So having them speak words of wisdom, don't just sort of throw it over your shoulder. Really listen to what they've got to say, because I guarantee you, if you're not listening now, maybe in 3 years' time you'll think back and go, you know what? I remember Michael saying that. I should have listened to him back then. So, taking advice and constructive criticism is a must, and that's one thing I didn't do, back in the days. I was very, what's the word? I was so into what I was doing. I every time I'd hear constructive criticism from someone else, I'd be like, you don't know what you're talking about, And I wish I'd listened to those people, because all they were saying is, like, you don't have to play a million notes to be a good player. Slow down and listen to the music and get melodic about it and add some feel into it. Where I was so technical, it was always a million miles an hour. And every time someone would say that, I'd get offended, and I'd be like, they wouldn't know what they're talking about. Of course, as we grow up, we mature. But I wish I was mature back then, and took on that advice. But as years roll by, you sort of learn to swallow your pride and say, you know what, he was right. I should have listened back then. So that's what I'd say to Michael, Michael. But everything else, I'd just say to him, you know what, do exactly what you're doing, continue on that path, but don't just listen to what I've got to say, because it actually means something. That's all I'd say. But yeah, there you go.
Fantastic. And basically, to wrap it up, we're hoping that we'll get you down for a clinic as soon as this COVID-19 situation's over and done with. But in the meantime, how do we find out more about Michael Dolce? I know you've got some lesson material and programs on your website. Just tell us what we can do to get access to you or hear from you or keep in touch. What can our listeners do?
Oh, look, I'm on Facebook and Instagram under Michael Dolce. Instagram, I think, is Michael Dolce Music. And I've got my website, www.michaeldolcemusic.com. I've got a whole bunch of, lesson packages on there. I've got a lot of transcriptions from solos that I played that are on YouTube. And I'm always up for a chat. If you need any advice, I'm always up. Send me an email, a message on Facebook. I'd love to hear from you. And hopefully, like Michael said, if all this stuff clears down, I can come down there and speak to you all personally. That'd be an absolute honour if I could do that.
Well, we'd love to have you down. Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on our podcast. It is the first ever inaugural episode, so we've kicked it off with a bang, and there was no one, when I was planning out this, you were the first person I thought of. So
thanks, mate. I appreciate that. That's really kind words of you. Kind words to say. Kind of you to say that, and hope to do more, mate. I'm here, so give me a shout out, and I'll be back on maybe for episode 100.
Yeah, we'll obviously be touching base very regularly. Guys, check out www.michaeldolce, is it .com or is it michaeldolcemusic.com?
michaeldolcemusic.com. Yeah.
Fantastic. So make sure you check out the stuff from Michael. We'll let you know once his album is out, and we'll keep you guys up to date with everything as well. But thank you very much, Michael. You have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we'll see our listeners. Thank you for listening, guys, in the next episode.
Thank you, Michael.
If you enjoy this show and want to hear more of our work, be sure to subscribe to this podcast. For links and resources mentioned in this episode, including a free ebook on how to find more guitar students, visit us at www.topmusic.co/guitar or check out the show notes. And lastly, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.